Shabbat Shalom, my friends, and Chag Urim Sameach. Shabbat is an oneg, a sublime experience of joy. We pray, we sing, we eat special foods. Even taking a nap is a mitzvah on Shabbat, a mitzvah that I most scrupulously observe. And Chanukah is an outpouring of joy. Candles, dreidels, latkes, sufganiyot, and songs, so many songs, including Adam Sandler's Chanukah in Santa Monica, a traditional song, I believe, from the Talmudic era. And there is an extra dollop of joy that comes from the realization that we are now moving through the darkest days of the year, and slowly, light is increasing, even as we increase the number of candles in our Chanukiot. The Midrash teaches us that Adam was in despair when he encountered his first nightfall. Was the impenetrable darkness a foretelling of permanent loss, of the end of that experiment known as creation? But when the first dawn broke, that is when Adam could actively take on his role as a partner in creation. Our Sedra is MIKETZ, Genesis 41, verse 1 and following, and contains the wondrously rich and compelling story of Joseph's rise to power in Egypt, along with a kind of untangling of the complex relationships between Joseph and his brothers. But before we plunge forward, a brief interruption that totally falls out of the chronology of the Torah stories. In a few weeks, Torah commentators will be debating how it is that the Egyptians managed to enslave the Israelites. One of the most compelling answers is that Pharaoh moved slowly, step by step, removing aspects of the Israelites' freedom until they woke up one day and discovered that they were slaves. Freedom can be lost not only through conquest and a violent overthrow of government, but also by the diminishing step by step of human rights. As I listened to the arguments before the Supreme Court this week, I wondered and feared whether we have now entered a period in which step by step our own freedoms are being eroded. Is it our fate to awaken one day and to discover that our precious freedoms simply no longer exist? Is it even too late to stop the process? So, my friends, I wonder and I fear. And that's the end of the interruption. Okay, now, Avivah Zornberg brilliantly observes that, quote, the essential fact of Joseph's life is that he is a man who was thrown into a pit. The essential fact of his life. He's a man who was thrown into a pit. Actually, into more than one pit. The experience of being in a pit shaped Joseph's understanding of his life when his brothers, acting out of outrage and jealousy, threw Joseph into a pit. The Hebrew word for pit there is bore. Bore. A bore is a pit. And when Potiphar, egged on by his wife, has Joseph thrown into a dungeon, the Hebrew text calls that dungeon bore, a pit. More often, bore is translated as a cistern, bor mayim, a gathering of water. But these borot have no water. They were not intended to be places which help sustain life. The bore favored by Joseph's brothers had no water, but it wasn't empty, at least not according to Rashi. Rashi states that this bore was a place where there were deadly serpents and scorpions. This bore was a place of darkness, of isolation, and of death. And the bore favored by Potiphar wasn't empty either. It was a dungeon from which some might somehow, someday, emerge into life, but from which most never again saw the light of day. Both borot were places where the term buried alive would be most apt. Both borot were places where the inhabitants are lost to the world, forgotten. They were, modern term, ghosted. They were forced to disappear. Even Pharaoh's cupbearer, a man who received a most favorable prediction from Joseph regarding his future, even that cupbearer quickly forgot that young man somewhere in the bore. Twice, Joseph was in a black hole that absorbed all light from his life, and twice he emerged. Tim Rice, in his Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, never did find a place for the borot in Joseph's tune-filled life. Too much of a downer, I would suspect. What might have it felt like to twice be in a bore? You would be in a place that most people would find to be unimaginable. You would be in a place where your past was without meaning and where your future simply did not exist. You would be in a place where the term continuity simply lacked all meaning. Einenu, the brothers said in referring to what happened to Joseph. Einenu. Joseph simply was no more. And then he emerged. Joseph was brought to Egypt as a slave and managed to secure for himself a comfortable existence in Potiphar's household. Thrown back into a bore, Joseph emerged once again. Now he was viceroy of Egypt, second only to the throne, second only to Pharaoh, second only to one who considered himself to be a living embodiment of a god. Not bad. But Zornberg argues that in neither case did Joseph emerge, did he really emerge from the bore. He was still in a bore while serving Potiphar. He was still in a bore while serving Pharaoh. Of course he was. He still had lost his past. He still had no future, and his current outward successes could not give him either a past or a future. Until he wept. Joseph wept when he first heard his brothers describe how they remembered Joseph, how he was somehow still alive in their memories, how they still felt out of guilt, out of remorse, maybe out of love, strong feelings of attachment to Joseph. And then Joseph wept again when he looked upon his brother Benjamin's face. Benjamin, his only full brother, both offspring of Rachel. Benjamin, who aroused in Joseph powerful feelings of a shared history and of love. And Joseph wept a third time when, no longer able to restrain, to control himself, he revealed himself to his brothers. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? And then he said, I am Joseph, your brother. It is only then that Joseph finally emerges fully out of the borot. His past was no longer unreachable. His future contained the possibilities of change, of hope, of finding purpose, focus. And his present? Now, most assuredly his present in terms of his relationship with his brothers and his fathers was not suddenly all sweetness and light, but it was a present in which Joseph felt that he had agency, in which Joseph could feel himself to be somewhat integrated, somewhat at ease. It was his present. My friends, our people has been in the darkest and emptiest, the very darkest and very emptiest of borot. And we, as individuals, have far too often been in our own dark and empty places. But the story of Joseph, with its themes of brokenness and of hope, speaks to us through Joseph's tears. Tears of self-discovery. Tears of tomorrows that might yet exist. Tears that give meaning to what it means to emerge from the pit. Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Chag Urim Sameach. And remember, don't let the lights go out. Have a good week.